And it looks like we are live. What it do, baby? Give us just a second here, guys. We're going to let the stream breathe, get the Facebook groups in here really fast, get our wonderful community full steam and ready to go. Mile high hello, everybody in Broncos country. Welcome into another episode of the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. I'm your host, Lance Sanderson, and joining me, as per usual, is my good friend and colleague. He is Mile High Huddle's senior NFL draft analyst, the one and only Erick Trickel. Erick, dude, obviously, I know how you feel. Thanksgiving is the worst holiday on the planet, and Christmas is far better. However, I know that you had Thanksgiving with your family yesterday, as did pretty much everybody across the country. How are we doing today? How was Thanksgiving?
It was good. I did up a prime rib that my brother bought and came out pretty well. Had made some bomb mashed potatoes. You know, the only two things I was responsible for, thankfully. But it was a good holiday. I mean, family was over. My old boss was over as well. He came and joined us, watched a little bit of the Vikings-Patriots game with him before he took off. And it was a good day hanging out with family and friends.
Nice. Yeah, this sounds really fun. We did 2 turkeys at my house. Samantha did one in the roaster, and I put one on the smoker, and we almost had a catastrophe. Like, it was bad. The smoker has the computer board in it. Decided that we were running at 475 degrees, not 375 degrees. So yeah, it got really interesting there for a minute, but crisis averted. Everything turned out great. Samantha's parents came over. We had a great day, watched some football, had a few too many adult beverages, and ate way too much food. And we still have way too much food in the refrigerator, man. We got so much leftovers. It's crazy. But that's the greatest part of Thanksgiving, is having all that extra food, having your family over, and having a great time. Speaking of giving thanks, guys, we're going to be giving thanks to this Denver Broncos team for forcibly watching some absolute terrible football. So thank you to the Denver Broncos for that. We got the Broncos against the Carolina Panthers this coming weekend. Carolina not doing so hot. That defense is sneaky. There's some sneaky aspects to this defense that I want to kind of break down with you, Erick. But first things first, let's say hello to everybody here in the chat. We've got Ernie. What's going on, Ernie? Mark Lindemood. Noble. I'm just going to say Noble. I'm not sure how to say your first name, but Noble is in the house. Colin Wood as well. Chang's in the house. Kevin Gray. What's going on, guys? Thank you for joining us here on Dove Valley Deep Divers. Also, guys, follow us on Twitter. Find me at Sanderson MHH, and for Erick at Erick Trickel. Also for Scott Kennedy, run the ones and twos at Scout Kennedy, at Mile High Huddle. You know the handles by now, Erick. So Carolina is in pretty well full sail, like fire mode, like burn it down to the ground, take everything out of here. They already fired Matt Rule a few weeks ago. They traded Christian McCaffrey. They were in talks of trading DJ Moore potentially to the Green Bay Packers. Brian Burns is a name that they had potentially moving forward. This team is struggling. They're moving Sam. They're starting Sam Darnold this week over Baker Mayfield. PJ Walker's doubtful to play, so they've got a lot of issues going on. They're 3-8, I believe, is their record, if not 3-7, much like the Broncos are. They're just struggling all over the place. What can the Broncos do to really exploit this team and see if they can turn this season around? Like, they got to win out if they want to make the playoffs.
Well, offensively, I mean, this is a good game. Like, they have some good talented players on their defense, but they have some glaring weaknesses as well. Certain players that are just struggling. Jeremy Chin has not been playing good football this season. Brian Burns, he's been doing excellent as a pass rusher, but he's still struggling as a run defender. And J.C. Horn, he's been struggling coming down with his run fills as well. So if you get J.C. Horn and Brian Burns on the same side, you want to attack outside the tackle in the running game. You want to force them to have to step up and play the run well. And teams have had tremendous success exploiting that weakness they've had because they haven't been able to do it. And anyways, I mean, you're not going to be able to run between the tackles because Derek Brown is just going to eat you alive when he wants to. Especially with how this interior offensive line has been playing. A couple of years ago, I know Denver ended up winning that game in 2020 with Teddy Bridgewater starting for the Panthers. I know that Denver ended up winning, but Derek Brown had a field day on that and dang near, shoved Netani Moody back into the lock of Drew Lapp, nearly forcing an interception that would have, flipped the outcome of the game. I mean, he's a game wrecker, so you got to avoid him. So attacking the edges in the run game, attacking Jeremy Chin in the passing game, those are the two keys for this offense to try to, exploit consistently throughout the game.
No, I'm right there with you. Derek Brown has been absolutely fantastic this year. We were kind of running through some of his statistics earlier. He's second on the team, I believe, is what you said in terms of total pressure. So he's not only getting it done on first and second down, he's also getting it done on third down. A true 3-down interior defensive line playing on the nose, as far outside as I think a 3 technique I've seen him play, just on the outside shoulder of the guard a little bit. So it's fun to watch him play, because what he's going to do is he's going to just beat you with speed and athleticism. Like, he's got some fire in his hands, but it's not like a super powerful game. He's an athletic, quick twitch kind of a guy that's going to come right at you. And that's where this Broncos team has really struggled, especially in the running game, is the quicker defenders that do a good job of crossing the face of the guards. Dalton Reiser's really going to have his hands full this week. And then with Cam Fleming kind of being dinged up, Billy Turner being out, Calvin Anderson going to be getting the start again at the left tackle. I mean, running towards Brian Burns is going to be the big thing. Those guys excel mostly in running in run blocking. So I agree with you. Staying away from Derek Brown is going to be one of the bigger critical issues here for the Broncos defense. I want to pivot to the second level of the defense here just a little bit, because Corey Littleton is going to miss this game. I believe he has a hamstring injury. I cannot remember off the top of my head, but they have another really high quality run fit linebacker in Shaq Thompson. What do you think the Broncos can do to get away from him in the running game and kind of isolate him out in coverage?
Well, I mean, this year in coverage, he hasn't been doing that well. I mean, he's been about average for a linebacker in coverage. So, I mean, it's just a thing of like, you don't necessarily have to avoid him in coverage. You just want to make sure that you're not like trying to force it against him. You have the advantage of Jeremy Chin, who's been playing a good amount in coverage. CJ Henderson has been playing pretty poor football as well. So the safeties aren't that good. Like their coverage unit is a couple players that are standing out, and they help make the unit look a little bit better. And I mean, this defense, they are ranked 21st in DVOA against the pass. So I mean, that just right there is showing that they're not a good unit. So I don't think you have to avoid Shaq Thompson. I don't think that you have to really be. He's not one that really you have to be super cautious of in coverage. He's just one that you don't want to try to force the ball against, and just, take advantage of the opportunities when they are there.
Yeah. He's so good in his run fits though. Like, that guy is all over the place. He does a great job racking up tackles every single week. So that's another guy to kind of avoid, which is another reason why you want to get the outside zone game going. If you can get the outside zone game going, or well, actually, you know what? I think probably better pin and pull. If you can pin and pull Brian Burns and try to get everything moving to the outside on some counter action runs, that's going to be a really great way to exploit this running defense. We haven't even gotten really to J.C. Horn at the third level of the defense for the first cornerback taken right in front of Patrick Surtain in the 2021 NFL draft. With Horn, last year he broke his foot, so we didn't really get to see a lot of him. So I'm really curious to get kind of your analysis on his performance this season. And before we get to that, I want to say hi to Chris Hernandez, a veteran. And thank you, Chris, for joining us. Nothing to say, just really kind of showing some love, some emojis there. And thank you, Chris, for that. We appreciate you for joining us over on Facebook. Travis Weber as well. Good evening, Lance, Eric, Scott, and Broncos Country. Happy post-Thanksgiving. Happy post-Thanksgiving to you as well. And as always, Ernie Mays in the house saying, hello, Lance, Eric, go Broncos Country only, he says. One more. Kevin Gray saying, hope all the Broncos country had a good Thanksgiving. Good evening, Lance, Eric, and Scott. And so if they lose this game, will Hackett be gone? # Denver Broncos for life.
No, I think at this point we're seeing Hackett stick until the end of the season. So I've been, for a while now, I've been saying that I doubt Hackett gets fired in season. It just isn't something that Paton wants to do. He's talked about it multiple times. And it's not a situation of, there are situations where you want to fire head coach in season. Are they causing a serious locker room issue? Matt Rule was the Jaguars guy last year, whose name just completely escaped me at the moment. He was causing it. He was causing the issue, with the whole scandal of him at the bar and kicking the kicker and all that stuff like that. He was causing direct locker room issues. And I think what is telling about Hackett with this locker room was Melvin Gordon's comments after he was cut. Melvin Gordon has never been shy about speaking his mind, and he still talked well about not just Nathaniel Hackett, but how the locker room is responding to him. And I think that is going to be something that will help at least get him to the end of the season. The locker room's not quitting on him. I mean, they're playing some bad football, yeah, but they're not quitting on him. They're not quitting in games. And once that happens, maybe, I think, but at the very least, with him being fired, you won't see any movement until they are officially eliminated from the playoffs. And even then, again, I don't think he gets fired in season.
Yeah, I was trying to find the quote that it was from Mike Kliss, I believe, at 9 News there in Denver. It said something to the effect of like how bright Nathaniel Hackett is, and how many people have really kind of bought into his system, bought into him as a coach, as a person, and he thinks that it's going to be a great turnaround essentially for this Broncos team. Despite the public issues that he had with the fans and going back and forth with people on Twitter, liking tweets about Philip Lindsay getting hurt, there was some other stuff that said, well, maybe I might finally get an opportunity. He got a DUI here in Denver, so it's been kind of a very maligned relationship with Melvin Gordon. But for him to come out and say those nice things about Nathaniel Hackett leads me to believe that maybe we ought to pump the brakes just a little bit. And if we can get a little change of direction in the culture from what he's trying to do and maybe shut Russell Wilson up just a little bit, then we might be able to see this team turn it around. Eric, go ahead and take that from Phil.
Yeah, Phil comes in saying, good evening, Lance, Eric, and Deacon Scott. Survive Thanksgiving. Now, if only we can survive Sunday. Yeah, I'm more worried about surviving Sunday, especially mentally. Oh, man. So my old boss, he's a Raiders fan, and, unfortunately, we invited him to it, and I started talking about how bad the Raiders are, and he just looks at me and told me to shut up, that his team beat us twice. And that was it for me yesterday. He's not wrong, but it's like that was it. Like, my mouth was shut at that point, speaking anything about the Raiders. But yeah, surviving that is a little rough. And with the whole thing with Melvin Gordon, last thing I want to say on that, I mean, this is a dude who, after he was cut, the first thing he puts out was taking a shot at, how Broncos country, how the fans were consistently after him. So yeah, he's not afraid to speak his mind. He's never been afraid to speak his mind. So if Hackett was a problem, he wouldn't have I mean, he may not have, spilled the tea and said all these issues and, because that's just going to hurt him trying to find a new team, but he wouldn't have been as praising of Hackett and, the locker room and how the locker room's taken to him.
Yeah. Last thing on this, I found that tweet from Mike Kliss, November 23rd. It was a quote. He says, from Melvin Gordon, said, quote, Hackett is bright enough and he's won over enough guys to eventually figure it out. He's been making changes like you see. He's taken his ego out of it, and he truly believes team first, and I respect him for that. So with Melvin Gordon, like you said, he's very candid. He does a really good job of conveying exactly what's on his mind. So for him to go out and say that to Mike Kliss in an exit interview that he had shows there's a little bit more faith inside that locker room than what we're seeing potentially with the product out on the field. Offensively, now for the Carolina Panthers, like I said earlier in this game, we have Sam Darnold going to make his first start of the season over Baker Mayfield this week. PJ Walker again is going to be on I believe he's listed as doubtful this week, but so we're going to see Sam Darnold. This is a big time matchup for this Broncos defense because they can really exploit a guy. They've had their hands on so many different footballs in terms of knocking away passes, like that pass that they had against the Raiders last week, where it went through Josh Jacobs' hands, hit a Broncos defender, hit Jacobs in the face, bounced up in the air, and it fluttered harmlessly to the turf. They've also had, I think they're second or third in the NFL in terms of forced fumbles, and they have 2 fumble recoveries all season. It's been a bad just luck of the draw, essentially, when it comes to the turnovers here. Sam Darnold fumbles the ball a lot, and he doesn't take care of it through the air. I want to see some turnovers here.
Yeah, I mean, he's a player that should be pretty easy to confuse and, rattle a little bit. He's a guy who, I mean, throughout the years, we've seen him. You hit him a couple times and he starts seeing ghosts and he starts feeling pressure that isn't there and he starts making mistakes. He is 1-1 against the Broncos. I mean, the one win was that one Case Keenum game back in 2018 where they managed to get a couple big passes off from Sam Darnold to Robbie Anderson. But in that game, I mean, Sam Darnold only completed 10 passes in his career, in his 2 games against them. He's 33 of 64 and has been sacked 7 times. And that second game was a terrible game from him, as the Broncos were able to, go back. That was the one catch with the Jerry. I'm pretty sure it was the Jerry Jeudy catch, right?
Yep. That was week 4 of the last season, and Brett Rippon started that game against Sam Darnold. Jerry Jeudy. There was a Thursday night football game. The Broncos ended up getting a long touchdown pass from Jerry Jeudy, and then an amazing touchdown run by Melvin Gordon to close out that game. So yes. Let me grab this real fast from Travis. Travis Weber says, these are first-year coaches. We need to grow with them as they grow. And there's some truth to that. I'm not going to completely dismiss that thought, because you absolutely are correct. They got to grow. They've got to learn these new roles. But at the same time, there's still enough incompetence there that you can point a lot of the issues that this team has directly at the coaching staff and directly at Nathaniel Hackett, because as the head coach, the buck stops with him. And so a lot of those issues are his game management issues. So that's why this is a topic of conversation. And Travis, we appreciate you for joining us as always, buddy.
Yeah, and with that, it's the same thing with players. Like, when they're young and they're still growing, yeah, you want to give them time, but they still have to show enough to sit there and warrant that extra time, warrant the patience that's with them. I mean, if they come out and they don't look it right away, like, you got to turn it around quickly, otherwise you're not. And so far this season, Hackett hasn't started to show that growth from it. He's shown some ability to adapt. We've talked about that before on the show with his run game and changing that up, because what wasn't working. And I mean, what they changed it to isn't working, but slightly a little bit better. Not much. And just little things, but it's not seeing an improvement of the team. And like, you can't stick with that for too long, because if you stick with the incompetence that he's shown for too long, that's when you start to lose the locker room, and you're trying to build you're trying to rebuild a fractured locker room from a defense that quit on Vic Fangio last year and essentially weren't listening to him. You don't want to have that just happen again after trying to repair it because you just kept Hackett too long. So you got to find that balance of not too much patience, but enough patience.
Yep. Oh, hi, Kevin. Sorry about that, guys. Garth Knight jumping in here with a $10 super chat, talking more Nathaniel Hackett here, but also some Melvin Gordon, saying, I like Hackett because he's new school, but whoever held on to Melvin Gordon while he was running like a zombie for the last 5 weeks needs to be called out. Lots of wasted carries regardless of who would be carrying the football. I want to kind of address this here because I find there's some issues here. And don't get me wrong. Melvin's fumbles were to the point where you cannot have that happen. Like, you're talking one fumble every other game this season, and there's costly at the goal line fumbles, or like two of them inside the 5, 3 of them inside the 5-yard line. You cannot have this from a veteran running back that's been in the NFL for 8-9 years, however long it's been. The problem is where the Broncos are currently at with the construction of their roster. As of right now, after they cut Melvin Gordon on Monday, they have 3 running backs, Latavius Murray, Marlon Mack, and Divino Zigbo, who were not on the opening day 53-man roster. They're just not there. Javonte Williams is out, obviously, with a torn ACL for the rest of the season. Mike Boone is going to be back, hopefully, here in a couple of weeks. While I understand that you need to hold Melvin Gordon accountable, and this is a great move from Nathaniel Hackett and George Paton to say that poor play like that is not acceptable. We're going to make sure that everybody knows we have to start making some changes around here. The problem that I have with the cut is, while you may not be able to utilize Melvin Gordon in a first team starting bell cow type of role because he fumbles the football too often, Marlon Mack hasn't played in almost 2 years. He has coming off of a torn Achilles from last season. Divino Zigbo has like 5 total carries in the NFL. And you're going to lean on Latavius Murray, who's 29 years old and doesn't have very much tread left on his tires. He's a physical runner. Like, this is your plan at the running back position, is wait for Mike Boone, who's never healthy. Hopefully Latavius Murray stays healthy and Marlon Mack shows you something that he hasn't shown since 2020. I'm very leery of this decision, even though I think it probably is the correct one.
So I'm going to push back on that a little bit, because the whole thing with keeping Melvin Gordon and everything, I get where you're coming from, but running back is the easiest position to go out and bring somebody in.
Oh, I don't disagree with that.
It's the easiest one to go find somebody. They may not be good, But hey, as long as they're not fumbling, because what people seem to forget with Melvin Gordon is he had 3 fumbles that weren't counted because of just a split second. One that he was just barely, 2 of them he was barely down, and the other one he fumbled, and fortunately it went out of bounds. Like, those as well need to be factored in with this, and they kept sticking with him when he was ineffective. And the bigger issue here with me is that after benching him, they turned around and went back to him, which again, it's a little bit understandable. It was a short week. They kind of SOL out of it, but they went back to him because he publicly complained about being benched in the second half.
Yeah.
And that is the thing that does fall back onto Hackett. As you said, the buck stops with him because he's sitting here, he's trying to be 2-player friendly. Like, it's a way that you're going to lose control of the locker room that way, of not holding players accountable. This is a guy who literally cost you a game and he's cost you multiple games over the last, going back to towards the end of last season as well. Like, you got to hold him accountable for it. And that is either you bench him, and if he doesn't take to that, then you cut him. Like, nothing against Melvin Gordon. I thought a lot of the hate that he got here was more than he deserved, but it got to a point where you just could not stick with it anymore. Go find somebody else, and guess what? If you're not getting worse. Like, at the very least, it's a lateral move, because maybe they won't have these few big plays that he had,
right?
But you don't have to risk a fumble almost every single time that they touch the ball, most likely. And if they do fumble, well, guess what? Move on again. Running back should be turned like constantly. It's such an easy position to find players.
Oh, I don't disagree with that line of thinking. I'm where this team's at, cutting I can't even necessarily say a good player, because he's only averaging 30 freaking yards a game this year. Like, the running game for this team has been bad. And now you're going to bring in a guy that's, if you do go out and get a guy, you're bringing in a guy that's unfamiliar with this offense. It's already having troubles being translated to the players. Like, there's confusion going on. It's been talked about from multiple.
So what? Melvin Gordon was part of that. Melvin Gordon didn't get this offense down.
I understand that. I get that. I don't know. And maybe it's my I don't want to call it personal liking of Melvin Gordon.
Well, no, it's your thing. It is your personal like for him, because remember, you were perfectly okay with paying him 1 year, $7 million for him to come back.
I wasn't ready to say that. No, that is not what I said. That is not what I said. Don't you dare put words in my mouth.
Speaking of the running game, we talked about this with the defense, the Panthers defense earlier, and I wanted to touch on it because I finally got the stat up about attacking the outside zone. So that the Panthers defense, they have had 87 outside zone calls against them, and that is the worst team against the outside zone in the NFL. They have the lowest EPA per outside zone play in the NFL. Again, it is significantly lower than any other team in the NFL. We talked about Brian Burns, as good of a pass rusher he is. Like, he sucks against the run. As good as JC Horn is in coverage, he's not that good of a run defender. Like, he's still learning his run fills. He wants to be physical and everything, but the technique isn't always there, getting off even receiver blocks. So this is a game, we've kind of crapped on Cortland Sutton a little bit over the last few weeks. He had a good game on Sunday, like, as a blocker too. Like, he had some nice blocks. And it's like, do you need your tight ends? You need your wide receivers to step up in this game as blockers, because you got to get the outside zone working. You're not going to be able to run between the tackles, as we talked about with Derek Brown. So get that going. And on the opposite side of things, they're not an offense that wants to attack the outside zones. So you want to play a little bit heavier in the middle, maybe a lot like we've seen the last 2 weeks, because Dante Foreman, he's got next to nothing left when it comes to getting outside. Like, he is very much a north-south runner. He's going to get the ball and he's going to run. He's going to hit one of the A gaps basically consistently. Every now and then a B gap, but he's pretty much a very straightforward runner. He just still has some good power left. Very Latavius Murray-like with where they're at in their careers. So Denver's going to want to focus on doing that and play big in the middle. And this offensive line, they're a good unit. They're a good run blocking unit. Penalized quite a bit. Ike Ekwonu has the most penalties is the individual player with the most penalties. And they are struggling in pass protection, which, again, going to Sam Darnold, rattling him earlier, making him see ghost. This is a good offensive line to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Attacking Brady Christensen, who's a player that I know you loved coming out in this last year's draft. Austin Corbett as well at the right guard position. Like there's some opportunity along the interior of this offensive line based on just scouting what we've seen of them in the NFL. Like there's an opportunity here. Let's get Draymond Jones lining up 4-eye and attacking Austin Corbett directly into his face. Like that's a great way to attack this offensive line in the passing game. Bradley Bozeman at center. Like there's a lot of really good ways for this Broncos team with Deshaun Williams playing well, DJ Jones playing well, Draymond Jones playing well. With Alex Singleton and his run fits right now, the way that he's playing the game, I think that Deontay Foreman is going to be the least of the worries, especially with, as Henry points out here, Sam Darnold. He says, Sam Darnold, come on, don't let him score more points than Russ. I don't think that that's necessarily a problem from the defensive side of things. It's a problem from the offensive side of things and them just not getting things together, moving the ball down the field consistently. So, and they couldn't do it against the Raiders, which is a significantly worse defense than this Panthers unit. And like I put it in my prediction at milehighhuddle.com in our predictions piece, the Mile High Huddle Roundtable. It's up live right now, milehighhuddle.com. Until this Broncos offense can figure out a way to be consistent drive to drive, game to game, it's hard to pick them to win games because they just can't put points on the board. Has nothing to do with the defense. They're allowing the like 14 and a half or 16 points a games. Number one defense in the NFL in terms of points per game allowed. And if your defense is only allowing 16 points a game and you're averaging 14.7, it's the first time that's ever happened since 1946, guys. It's a long time that we've seen something this ineffective from an offense on a single team that has a defense this good. So until the offense starts to get stuff going, Sam Darnold may put up more points than Russell Wilson, and that's a sad deal.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, and I agree with that. And I think obviously their dangerous weapon is DJ Moore in the passing game, but you can limit him with Patrick Surtain, even though Patrick Surtain got absolutely toasted multiple times against the Raiders. That final play, like, it was a beautiful design by McDaniels, and it was a great route by Davante Adams, but there were mistakes there by Patrick on that final play. It happened earlier. He got a little bit too far behind in his trail technique. And then there was another play. I'm fairly certain it was the Josie Jewell near interception. That Matt Collins absolutely toasted Surtain off the line. Like, that is a game to grow and improve from, a learning game. I mean, every great corner, and I've been hard on Patrick Surtain, like very hard about him. I want to see him be physical in all phases consistently and not just in spurts. But this is a good game for him to bounce back at. Like, this seems like a kind of like, okay, you had your bad game, now step back up and, send that message of, hey, one bad game doesn't make me a bad corner. Like, right. And nobody's saying he's a bad corner, just to be fair. I mean, and DJ Moore, I mean, that's a tough matchup for Patrick Surtain because of the way he is. He's a good route runner. He's really shifty, and like, he can attack him in similar ways that Davante Adams can, just not quite as, I mean, not the same receiver, just to be clear, not saying they're the same type of receiver, just attacking in similar ways. So it's a thing of, to help him out, get that pressure on Sam Darnold, and it'd be interesting. And I'm looking forward to seeing how Patrick Surtain bounces back from this, because despite all my criticisms, he is still one of the top corners in the NFL. And he's not even done in his second year. Like, he is absolutely fantastic as a corner.
No, I don't disagree with that. Surtain had a bad game. Davante Adams got him a couple of times. Mac Hollins got him a couple of times. The one that I was really noticed the most, and I actually have a film piece up at milehighhuddle.com right now on Damari Mathis. And Damari Mathis had I thought, a really good game against the Las Vegas Raiders. He's slowly but surely improving his technique and trusting his technique just a little bit more and more every time that he steps out on the field. And that's a great sign for a team that right now, missing Ronald Darby, missing K'Wan Williams, they're leaning on Damari Mathis to play a lot, and he's really stepping his game up. He went one-on-one with Davante Adams a couple of times. It was really sticky in his coverage. He did a great job filling in his run fits and stuff like that. Very physical tackler. Go check this film piece out. I've got a lot of really good feedback. If you guys do it, go check it out. I really would appreciate that. But Damari Mathis, I'm curious to see how he continues to grow against a defense that excuse me, against an offense with like you said, DJ Moore, not like the same type of player as Davante Adams, but a guy that can win in a lot of the same different ways. DJ Moore probably a little bit more explosive than Davante is, so that's why I think he has the more verticality in his game. So that's going to be something to watch, especially with Damari Mathis, because the one thing that I do have bad to say about Damari Mathis is his penchant for biting on double moves, like it was at Pittsburgh, is still there. He got beat big time by Mac Hollins on a double move post route. He actually got beat twice by Mac Hollins. One was a go route. It was like more of a stop and go. And then they beat him on a corner post route over the middle of the field. That's that big play where Mathis came back across the middle of the field and broke the ball up. So him biting on double moves and getting himself turned around is still an issue. But Damari Mathis is going to be fun to watch and see what he can do against DJ Moore, what he can do against guys like Terrace Marshall Jr. They've also got Laviska Shenault. So if you're a fan of University of Colorado, you should know that name very well. That's going to be kind of an interesting way of looking at this, is how does Pat Surtain rebound and how does Damari Mathis continue to be a quality starting cornerback in the NFL?
Yeah, definitely. Neil Natalie Freedom Smith comes in and says Russell Wilson is playing injured. New name to me, at least on Friday night. So thank you for joining us tonight. We appreciate it. And to this is like, Russell Wilson is playing injured. I mean, everybody knows about his shoulder injury that he has, and he's still dealing with the hamstring. Everybody knows about that. And the thing is every player in the NFL at this point is dealing with an injury. At this point of some sort. I mean, Josh Allen is playing injured. The thing with Russell Wilson, though, when it comes to injuries, is he was playing just as bad now as he was before the injuries really occurred. Mm-hmm. So it's an issue, yes, and it doesn't help things by any means. But it's not like he got significantly worse since the injuries. There's a great film piece by Ted Wynn on The Athletic that really talks about it. It breaks down multiple plays from the Raiders game. Talking about his issues with the reads, his panicking in the pocket, and it really focuses on the loss of mobility that he has had in his lower half. He's just not as quick or as shifty or as fast as he once was. And it's creating a lot of issues because that, again, and I've talked about this a lot, is using that is where he made a lot of magic with those, creating broken plays down the field in coverage by moving around, getting receivers open and making the big play that way. And he just can't do it quite the same. And the way that you want to change that is you still want to use it to a degree, but you want to speed up his reads, and he's just holding on the ball a second too long. He's like, one of them was that 3rd and 10 play. Like, the pocket was clean enough for him to stay in there and just step back and drive on the ball to get it to, I believe it was Kendall Hinton that was breaking open over the middle and wide open for a huge game. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't. With no pressure, he escapes out of the pocket, which then sees the right tackle give up a pressure because he put himself in a position that made it easier for the edge defender didn't have to go through the blocker anymore, and ended up throwing it incomplete, which is another issue with Russell Wilson on that too, is that his situational awareness is just completely shot, and no injury explains that aspect of his game.
Right. Albert Knopper's jumping in. What's up, Albert? How we doing? Say hi to Michelle for Eric and I. Good to see you, buddy. Thanks for joining us tonight. We really appreciate you. So Jeff Noyes, and I don't know if my pointing down at this had a comment here. He thought that there were 3 Max Crosbys out there. Yeah, it was not necessarily because let me rephrase this.
Max Crosby got his one camera filming.
Yeah, he got definitely a lot of wins, but there was a couple of times where Russell Wilson made it look like Max Crosby was tearing things up, and Max Crosby was actually stopped. Like, there was a couple of times where Russell Wilson stepped in and tried to evade and stepped right directly into where Max Crosby was at. Like, this is an issue, and it's been an issue for a few weeks now. And especially when he wanted to throw over the middle of the field. I know exactly the player you're talking about. I believe it was Frankie.
It was the 3rd and 10 play. After the 2-minute warning, it was the 3rd and 10 play.
Was that the one that Frankie put on his Twitter feed? Do you remember that?
Yeah,
where because Hendon comes on a crossing route, they have a deep post on the backside, and I think a little check down back to the right, mm-hmm. And Hinton was wide open, guys. We're talking like there was not a player. He was as wide open as Davante Adams was on the final play of the game. and Russell Wilson looked directly at it and then shuffled out and ended up. I think he didn't get sacked; he just threw the ball away. It was a really really bad play.
Before we get out of here, this is I've seen a couple comments of this over the weeks, and it's something that I kind of want to talk about. Jeffrey Wingham, another new name, at least for me on Friday nights. Don't recognize it. Thank you, Jeffrey, for joining us. He says, need a clean house starting with Paton. And I'm surprised at how hot this topic has been of should George Paton be on the hot seat? And my answer is going to be a little bit controversial. And yes, he should be on the hot seat. And the reasons for it are simple. Nathaniel Hackett and Russell Wilson. Right now, both of those look like two huge failures. And yes, he has some great draft picks. His drafts have been pretty good. But his drafts also are getting a boost because they're getting play time early. Mm-hmm. A lot of people seem to forget that Patrick Surtain was drafted 9th overall to be the 4th corner in the defense. Mm-hmm. He got boosted up because of injuries. Ronald Darby got hurt and Kyle Fuller got hurt. But that's not what he wasn't drafted for. He was drafted to be corner 4 for the year. Nick Bonito was drafted to be edge 5 for the year, but injuries have boosted him up. So they're getting more time out there, which is great. A lot of his later picks seem to be like hits. Jonathan Cooper, among them. So yes, he should be on the hot seat. Should he be fired? No, he shouldn't be fired. He should get another year. And I think I've said this on here before. If not, I know I've said it privately multiple times. If he sticks with Nathaniel Hackett, then he is tied with Nathaniel Hackett.
Yep.
Depending on what happens over next season, that if you're firing Nathaniel Hackett, then George Paton has to go after the 2023 season. If he fires George Paton this offseason, then he should get a chance to correct his mistakes.
Yep.
Find somebody who can keep Russell Wilson in check and get him to play better and add the pieces to get a good complementary football team with a strong running game, which is what Russell Wilson really needs to, get anything going at this moment. He should get that chance. And so I don't think he should be fired, but he should definitely be on the hot seat. And it shouldn't be super hot either, just to be clear. I'm not saying that it should be burning his butt, but it should start heating up.
Well, it's definitely not nearly as hot as Nathaniel Hackett's is, because
yes,
I don't want to say that he's going to get fired in season. I still think that there's a possibility for that, but it's going to be late. Like, you're talking week 14, because the team's just falling apart and they have another embarrassing loss to a bad team, because they're going to get the Rams. And that is going to be a bad team. The Rams are not playing very good football right now. They're going to go through Carolina, Baltimore. I believe they have Kansas City. Then they're going to get the Rams in there. They got an Arizona game in there as well. That Rams game and the Arizona game are the two games you really got to pay attention to, because if they lose those two games, and depending on how they lose, that might be where the final straw that breaks the camel's back, so to speak. I do think that there is that possibility. I don't think it's 100% likely. I do think it's a less than 0% chance, but it's close to 0. So probably like 5% if I had to put a number on it. So that, to me, I think does allow George Paton to have the opportunity to, like Eric said, go out and correct that mistake. I want to see the process behind it. I want to see what he does, the names that he brings in. Is he still staying aligned with, like he did this last season, the hottest coaching names on the cycle? Are we talking, or do we get Shane Steichen in? Do we get Jonathan Gannon in? Those are the Eagles offensive and defensive coordinators respectively. Is Dan Quinn going to be another name? And I know that for a fact he is going to be another name there. DeMeco Ryans. Can we get the 49ers defensive coordinator DeMeco Ryans in here? How about Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions? Can we get him in here to maybe kind of take a look at what's going on with this offense? Because the Detroit Lions, despite as bad as they are on defense, they're averaging like 29 points a game right now. They're the 8th highest scoring offense in the NFL. Like, there's some names out there. If he's going to continue with those kinds of names, I'm going to be okay with it. However, if he has a short list and it's Dan Quinn, Brian Schottenheimer, and whoever, like Norv Turner, for example, just throwing out a bad name. If that's the process, I'm going to be very, very clear in my frustration with George Paton moving forward. He's going to have another good draft class, and whatever coach that he hires coming out of that process is going to have this team turned around, because you're into year 3 and the team still is playing rookies at a high frequency rate. And it makes him look a lot better. Like you said, like those players are out there playing a lot. So I'm with you. I think his seat's hot, but I don't think that it's like you said. I don't think he's like on fire right now. Let's get him out of here. He's ashes, and it's done and over with. So I'm with you on that.
And there's 3 things that'll get a general manager fired. Well, 4 things really. 2 with 2 that go with it. Whatever. We'll say 4. We'll say 4. Failing to fix the quarterback position.
Yep.
Fixing the quarterback position incorrectly.
Yep.
Failing to get a head coach in. Sticking with a bad head coach for too long. Those will get a head coach fired quickly. So that's the big reason why I said what I said about him being tied with Hackett if he sticks with him. Jamal Williams, the Lions starting running back. I like the Ben Johnson. And I actually have an article up on myhuddle.com about some long-term options that can be looked at. 9 names for head coach, offensive and defensive coordinator as well to look at if you change over the staff. And I want to throw other names out there with Evro just in case he gets another head coaching. Just in case he gets a head coaching somewhere else. Jamal Williams, anyways, he has the same amount of running as touchdowns this season as the Broncos offense as a whole.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's an issue. Somebody asked a question in here about Russell Wilson, and I don't really want to, go down the Russell Wilson whole thing about it real quick, but it was a good comment that I thought was great. It was Chase Wellman. He says Russ is having issues that he's shown throughout his career. Now that he's slowed down, those are amplified, and that's exactly it.
Yep.
And on top of that is the comment right underneath it is String Guy says Pete Carroll understood how to use Russ, and that's exactly it. Is he was using him in a way to maximize the efficiency by cutting down the field and everything like that, and making life easier for it, where he could use his athleticism and using what mobility he had in his legs. Well, he's losing it, but there's still stuff there, and we still see it, and you can still use that. But the issues that started arising in Seattle, and I've talked about this at length, is he didn't want to be a rollout play action under center guy. He didn't want to be that type of quarterback, and so that led to issues there. I mean, he stormed out of a meeting because they wouldn't listen to him when they would go to that let Russ cook movement kind of thing of him being a pocket passing quarterback with long developing routes. What we're seeing here, it didn't work. And now he came to Denver, and Nathaniel Hackett essentially said, here's the playbook, adjust, add, do whatever with it you want with the passing game to get it how you like it. And that's what we have. And we're seeing it. Clint Kubiak managed to call plays that are in the playbook that have been installed and see some success. Some of the plays were things of like adding a little movement, those shotgun rollouts and everything. Those weren't initially part of the playbook, but they were just a quick little addition to it of, getting him out of the pocket, using that mobility a little bit. But after the first half, we saw the same issues all season long with it. It was the same long developing passing plays that the offensive line can't handle, that Russell Wilson can't handle, and the offense faltered. And that's as much of the talk is on Hackett, that is on Wilson. And how it is on Hackett is that he needs to put his foot down and end that. Clint Kubiak should put his foot down and end that. And Robert Merca says, hopefully we can show some improvements with Kubiak in his second week, making play calls. Could be the tipping point in this offense. So one thing I noticed, and I kind of mentioned this briefly, Kubiak on the script was great. But in the second half, he started caving to Wilson and everything. The big issue with him, the big reason why he wasn't viewed as an offensive coordinator candidate this last offseason with much gusto, Lance, is because he was great on the script there in Minnesota last year, but once they got off that script, it was absolutely terrible. They're changing EPA, they're changing efficiency, they're changing every single advanced analytic on offense from when they were on the script to when they were off. And your script is typically 20 to 30 plays, your first couple drives normally. Once he got off that script, it was absolutely just completely different, terrible, like it wasn't efficient at all. And so he wasn't getting it. And I want to see that improvement. The script will be great, but can we see the improvements after you are off the script? That is something that I think will be huge for him. If he does want to get back into conversation as an offensive coordinator, that is something that he has to improve on. You are muted.
I did not realize that I muted myself. I do apologize for that. You're absolutely correct there, Eric, in terms of what Kubiak says. And Robert, I wanted to grab this comment because this is the first time that I've seen your name in this chat. So thank you for joining us, Robert. We definitely appreciate you for joining in with the conversation here. I pulled up while you're talking about that being specifically on the script. You're talking about like the first 15 to 20 plays and whatnot. Go against the Raiders. This first game that Clint Kubiak was calling the plays. The Broncos' first 2 drives, 7 plays, 92 yards for a touchdown. The second one, 8 plays, 34 yards and a field goal. And their third one, 14 plays, 79 yards, and with a missed field goal. That was the blocked field goal at the end of the half that Melvin Gordon actually fumbled the football on to tie it all together. Those first 3 drives, the Broncos were moving the football fairly decently and actually were putting points on the board. And if you don't have the Melvin Gordon fumble there, you're talking the Broncos are going into halftime with, if nothing else, a 13-3 lead, because that fumble created so much momentum. Hell, if he holds on to that, breaks that tackle from Max Crosby, he falls forward into the end zone for a touchdown. You're going up 17-3. Like that's a big time momentum factor that just drained the entire stadium of all of the momentum. And that it like signifies to me exactly what you're talking about with Clint Kubiak being on the script. Those first 2 plays, those first 2 drives, 15 plays, we put 10 points on the board. They were doing that with Minnesota last year very, very frequently. Their first and second quarter drives were always resulting in touchdowns. Then they couldn't get anything going in the second half. We're seeing it again with Clint Kubiak. Hopefully we can get that kind of turned around, get Russell Wilson to step back, get out of the way a little bit, with Nathaniel Hackett having a focus on going around to the entire team, having some hands in the defensive meeting rooms, having his hands in the special teams meeting rooms. Maybe we can start to get a little bit more of a cohesive unit here and get some of these issues fixed that have been really kind of the same issues we've seen since 2016. So it's very frustrating. I think that's our last one. Eric, do you have something else before we get out of here?
I wanted to grab this one real quick. So Colin Wood says, so after we get him, the problems with Russ become apparent. He's always been short. No, they were always apparent. The Seattle Seahawks just covered up for it. And the issue hasn't been that he's short exactly. That's been an issue as to why he doesn't use the middle of the field. But there are ways to work around it. Seattle did that. And Denver has tried to do it. And what's so frustrating with him is that there's been multiple plays where he can see in the middle of the field. He can see the receiver wide open. And he just holds onto the ball and looks off of him. Like, there is something else there mentally with Russell Wilson to not even attempt in the middle of the field type throws. So the issues aren't exactly that he's been short, and the issues have always been apparent, but Seattle did their best to cover it up, and they had tremendous success for it for a long time until about 2019.
Yeah. Yep. Alrighty, with that, we got a wild comment here. I'm not even going to address this. No, we're not on the freaking pay call of the Broncos, man. Get out of here with that. Sorry. I want to grab it real quick and just say, is like, we are probably 2 of the ones on the Huddle Up pod that are the least apologetic for the Broncos. Player plays terribly, we will call them out for it. It doesn't matter who. So, Jeffrey, I mean, good luck to you. Enjoy another channel, but man, like what you said couldn't be farther from the truth, man. Yeah, it's not to call you out here, dude, but like to say that we're on the Broncos payroll. I can tell you that Chad Jensen signs my paychecks. Okay, in a way, let's put it that way. And I don't have any affiliation with the Broncos in terms of their media coverage. I'm an independent writer and do my stuff for Mile High Huddle. They don't tell me what I can and cannot say, and I blast them often. So anyways, with that, guys, we're going to get out of here. And Jeff, come back, please come back. Let's give us another opportunity to show you that, we can be critical. We can have some of the most fiery hot takes that you've ever seen about this team. But anyways, thanks, Jeff. We appreciate it. Thank you all for joining us here on Dove Valley Deep Divers. Follow us on Twitter by finding me at Sanderson MHH, for Eric at Erick Trickel, also for Scott running the 1s and 2s at Scout Kennedy. Also, guys, please at Mile High Huddle. That's the main Twitter account, the mother account, where you guys find breaking news and analysis, pretty much anything regarding your Denver Broncos. My Damari Mathis film piece is on there. Erick's coaching staff articles are over there. There's lots of really good stuff covering the Broncos at Mile High Huddle. It's where you're going to find all of it. Also, milehighhuddle.com, obviously. Folks, financially, if you're able to do so, please head on over to huddleuppod.com. That's the merch tent. Erick is actually wearing our Dove Valley Deep Divers hat right now. I have one as well. I have a t-shirt. There's a face mask. There's coffee cups. There's a onesie to fit your baby, if that's kind of what your thing is. Anything to suit the guys or the gals, you can find it at huddleuppod.com. And guys, if you're not financially able to do so at huddleuppod.com or even with super chats and stars donations, we appreciate all that. We really do. It's a great way to support the show. But the best thing you can do to help us grow, to help get more people is, first things first, subscribe. Subscribe to Mile High Huddle across all platforms, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We're on all of those platforms. You can find all of our podcast content anywhere you guys get your podcasts. So please subscribe to Mile High Huddle. Like every video you guys see across all social media platforms. And if you love it, share it, guys. Text it to your friends. Get it in front of as many Broncos fans as humanly possible, because without your guys' support, we could not do what we do best, which is cover your Denver Broncos. Got a handful of comments coming in here really fast. Oh, yeah, Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler being out again. That's huge for this Broncos offense, Erick.
Well, I think I said it last week. I mean, with KJ Hamler having a hamstring injury, they may as well put him on injured reserve. And I've said this multiple times on here. Hamstring injuries, and I've talked to a person who works in on a medical staff in the NFL about this before, and he flat out said if they deal with the hamstring injury, you may as well put them on injured reserve, because that's at least 4 weeks. Because hamstring injuries are so tricky and everything, and when it starts to feel right, just a simple can, twing it a little bit and rehurt it, and and there you go, you're sitting again. And so it's, to be safe, it's become like a 4 to 8 week injury anymore in the NFL. So may as well put him on injury reserve. It's going to be a little while, I think, for
KJ.
Yeah.
Okay. All righty. With that, guys, Phil jumping in last minute says, let's take a minute to give condolences to Nick. Did Nebraska beat Iowa today?
I'm pretty sure hopefully that's what it is, and it's not actually something serious.
Well, they hired Matt Rule, so maybe.
Yeah. Iowa sucks. So go Nebraska.
Let's go.
We'll make sure to pass on your condolences to Nick, harshly, because
I will definitely point this out. We are at 52 minutes of the podcast. I'm gonna put this into our group chat. Nick, you got a shout out and you got to go watch it. So you're gonna have to go check this out. Anyways, guys, thank you all again for joining us here on DVDD. You all stay safe and take care. Have a great weekend, and as always, go Broncos. We will see you guys same time, same place next week. See you guys. Thanks.